first race of 2024 done and our whole entire testing period, I hyper analyzed every single car, what are its strengths and weaknesses going into the next 23 Grand Prix for our racing season. Obviously, we didn't have such a eventful Bahrain race with not too many battles happening like usual, but we can pick up a lot on the race pace, the quality pace, and where these cars stand strengths and weaknesses wise, which will give us an idea what routes they go to upgrade their cars. Wanted to thank you guys. We're so close to 25K, which is just unreal to say. I didn't even think we'd be here at any time in the channel. It's so unreal, and thank you so much for supporting the channel like you guys do. If you're new here, I'd love if you'd subscribe and join the channel for a very long season, because the content's only going to get better, and I hope you guys enjoy it even more. Let's get into the strengths and the weaknesses for our 10 teams on the grid. I kind of put it in order that I think the teams are standing right now, so that's why Alpine is the first team that I'm covering. Now, obviously, I feel like Alpine is kind of now the meme of the Formula One grid. A lot of people are saying Andretti should join the grid instead of Alpine. Maybe that's a possible buyout now, considering what's been happening with the team. The strengths in the car aren't very many. I guess what I would say is the tire wear isn't terrible on the car. Their race pace wasn't bad. They actually had an okay strategy. By wasn't bad, they were still 10th, but their tire wear wasn't that bad. Now, weaknesses wise, car was overweight. It was very understeery and an uneasy drive, and that added, it was draggy as well. The car is like a boat. Think about it like that. It's hard to steer. It's hard to make it go where it needs to go to actually perform like a Formula car. High speed corners, it's really tricky on. The wheels going all over the place. The car isn't sitting down. Just a boat of a car at the moment. Williams was the next talking point for me, and the strengths for the car is it's a more predictable car. Before, it had its unpredictability in certain corners. It's a little more predictable than it used to be. Now, straight line speed is still something common within the car, and yet another strength. And Alex Albon pointed out and said with these cars, when you drive a certain car, you get used to the weaknesses that are in the car that are inherently within the team. That straight line speed was always a good thing for it, and a weakness has always been wind. Now with that wind, they have a new concept now, which comes with a new steering wheel, so that came with some electronic problems. That's another issue along with this FW46. In some corners, it still has some instability and understeer. A common problem that's been running along the grid as these cars are pretty overweight. Sauber had a better race than expected. Their actual race pace was very solid, their tire wear was good, and the top speed in the car is actually very good in competing with that of Williams, Red Bull, and Ferrari. Top speed has been a good strength for Sauber for the past couple of years, regardless of their car, but instability has been kind of the issue. Still kind of a thing, and I would say now quality pace, because it seems like the car is more suited to race with the tire degradation. They've probably gone down that kind of Red Bull-esque route because the tires don't fire up as quickly, so that makes for a better race than quality. Haas was, I think, the surprise for Bahrain. Everybody kind of had them down. I had them personally down, but the car has improved a lot. Top speed has been a consistent front runner with that. Quality pace was obviously good. And the tires seem more predictable than before. Both Nico and Kevin Magnussen talking about, the biggest things that we can point out from this race is that the tire wear was good. Magnussen stayed in 12th. He couldn't get passed by Yuki, who was in maybe the little bit of the better car. That's a good thing because K-Mag in the race is better. He needs to improve that quality. But overall, the Haas car in the VF24 is much more improved than that of its predecessor already. Now the RB car, the Racing Bulls car, the V-Carbo 1, whatever you'd like to call it, is a stable car, and its tire degradation is pretty good. Now, the weaknesses in this car are pretty common ones that I think will get laid out throughout the season with more upgrades and building off the base they currently have. Downforce is an issue, and understeer in the car. As I said, understeer is a common problem. The downforce in the car, you can see in certain corners, it lacks that kind of grippiness to it, and the car overall is sometimes unstable in short corners. Typically in turn 10, it was having an issue, a couple of lockups. Yuki and both Daniel struggled a little bit with the car there, and overall it wasn't a top 5 contender like most people were thinking, so we'll have to see where they go and where the car improves throughout the season. The MR24, I think, under-delivered to some people, but at the same time it's kind of in the place that we were all expecting, to be honest. The actual aero efficiency in the car seems better. It is faster now in higher speed corners. Sector 2 was actually a pretty strong point for it, and it's still a very good car in that short corner speed. better in cornering than it was in the AMR 23, seems better laid out. But the problem with the car is it's got a weak front end, which might not suit it for certain tracks like Jeddah, and it's still a pretty draggy car. The DRS efficiency is actually solid, but the car overall is just draggy without that DRS effectiveness, and it still needs to improve upon the straight line speed that was an issue for them even last year. McLaren still has those inherent traits from the 2023 car. High speed corners are still really strong, and it's got a really good downforce platform on its stable base. Now, the actual weaknesses in the car, dragginess yet again, and short corners. So it has improved upon its 2023 car, but it still has those bad traits that nobody really liked with the McLaren, and it's continuing upon that. Now, they do have a big upgrade schedule that's supposed to resolve this stuff. It's supposed to come sometime after Japan is the thought process right now. We'll have to see. The McLaren's still kind of keeping those 2023 traits, but a better car overall. Mercedes is an interesting one because we didn't actually see the true pace on the car, which I guess is a good thing for them. Their actual strengths come from tire degradation, downforce, and low speed corners. This has also been another common trait with these Mercedes cars. The tire deg actually in 23 wasn't as great as it was in 22. Downforce is much better this year, but its weaknesses come through the understeer. The cooling package is still a bit of a problem and kind of unstable for them. And the bouncing. The bouncing on the car when it's put too low to the ground, maybe with that suspension arm it was bouncing even more, it seems to still be an issue. Now, this is not porpoising. This is maybe with the bumpiness in tracks, it seems to be the issue. So tracks like Spain is going to be really strong. And this car has a lot more to prove and a lot more to come to it with this new W15. Ferrari was the second front runner here, and the competition for Red Bull in the year I think will be Ferrari. It's got a stable platform, its top speed is still very strong while also improving upon the downforce and improved tire degradation. Now, this car seemed to have it all, with the exception of the reliability, which is still a current issue with Ferrari. Leclerc obviously had that issue from laps like 1 to pretty much 25, where the front brake ducts weren't working correctly and one tire was a lot more loaded than the other, so a lot of lockups were happening. And the braking in the car is still a bit unstable. Carlos also had issues with the braking, but actually kind of worked around it. So there's still a lot more pace to be found in this car, and they seem to have picked up on the good things on the SF23 and the F175 and made a hybrid of a car. The last car with its strengths and weaknesses. Now, it's the Red Bull RB20. This thing is a beast. Everywhere around, they've made an animal. Improved everywhere, at least a little. Its braking is even better than before. They're braking into corners so much later than they used to. The actual downforce in the car is better. They were taking those low speed corners much better than before. Yes, it does have a little bit of slight understeer, and I feel like a lot of cars in the very last corner of Bahrain were struggling with that short corner speed. Now, we do know that this is a track with medium downforce, so it's still good to know that every team kind of struggles in that last corner. Aston was pretty good there. Mercedes was as well. That's kind of where the strengths lie in that car. But McLaren and Red Bull seem to kind of inherently have that low speed issue. Now, I mean, it's obviously way less in the Red Bull than it is the McLaren, and they're finding ways to resolve it. But that is still a current problem going on with the Red Bull. Still a top speed monster and still amazing in everything else. So I do not expect this car to get overtaken very soon. Now, Bahrain definitely pointed out, I think, the weaknesses to its competitors rather than the Red Bull, and it will be a much more competitive season. I'm ready for 2024 to kick off even harder. We got Jeddah this week, and I'm excited. Hope you guys stick with the channel. Hope you guys watch me, and hope you had a good time. Please leave a like, subscribe. It would mean the world, and peace.